I don't have many friends. That's why I keep their bodies in the basement. Submitted by Balak Cat 19. Hi, I'm Blair Bathory, and this is the Something Scary podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Whether this is your first time, or you're one of the brave souls who join us every week. Sometimes summer love feels like a breeze, warm, fleeting, and full of promise. But sometimes it hides a dark tide beneath the surface, pulling hearts into depths they never meant to explore. When passion turns deadly and the sweetest romances become traps, you must beware of the true dangers that lurk beneath. First, the curse beneath the dock, followed by dinner with the dead. Finally, in our last story, claimed by the current. Quick reminder here to check out our merch store. We've got some scary summer items going on sale right now. Go to SomethingScary.com to check out everything we've got. And please don't forget to comment on this video on Spotify or the Snarled YouTube channel, because we love reading your 2-sentence horror stories. So, wanna hear something scary? The summer I turned into a ghost. Sometimes trails you take lead to places you wish you'd never found, like in this story inspired by Miss S.A. They said Camp Silverpine had a lover's dock. It wasn't on the maps, but if you followed the unlit trail behind the boathouse, past the mosquito-thick marsh and the hollow log that smelled like damp pennies, you'd find it. By taking the warped board stretching into Moonwater Lake, counselors swore it was where people went to sneak kisses after curfew, a leftover from the camp's wilder days in the 80s. Tonight, Danny was the one leading the way. Bonfires are gonna burn for hours, she said, brushing a mosquito from her neck. Plenty of time before they notice we're gone. Jonah followed, his flashlight beam bobbing ahead. He laughed softly, but kept glancing over his shoulder, like he expected someone to be following. You sure this is worth the hike? He asked. Only if you're brave enough to see it, she teased. The trail was almost hidden tonight by shadow, and there were no crickets, no loons on the lake, just the damp rustle of leaves and the slow drip of water from the canopy. The air smelled faintly of metal and algae. Danny tried not to think about the camp director's announcement at dinner. Police are warning folks not to go near the water after dark. Someone's been harassing the hikers. Says he's looking for his wife in the lake. Big guy, smells like fish. They call him the Lake Keeper. The others had laughed, but the dishwasher in the kitchen had gone pale. She'd claimed she saw a man waist-deep in the shallows last week, barnacles on his jaw, just watching. When they reached the dock, the lake was still, the moonlight laying silver scars across the black surface. The boards complained under their weight as they sat on the edge, legs dangling over the water. Jonah leaned in to kiss her. Her lips were warm, tasting faintly of smoke and sweet cider from the bonfire. Danny let herself relax into it until she heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She froze. It was a slow and deliberate scratch coming from under the dock. Not the hurried scurry of an animal, but the steady drag of something that knew they were there. Jonah pulled back. You hear that? Probably a muskrat, Danny said, but the words came out thin. Scratch, drag, scratch. The boards vibrated faintly with each sound. Jonah's light was too weak to pierce the gaps in the dock, so Danny pulled out her phone, crouching to shine her flashlight towards the water. The beam skimmed the surface and caught a pale shape just beneath it. At first, she thought it was a fish belly up. Then it moved, a hand. Swollen and webbed between the fingers, black, curved nails traced the dock's underside like they were counting the planks. Her breath hitched. The hand vanished into the dark, and then the head rose. Hair, tangled with weeds, clung to its face. Its skin was waxy, stretched too tight. A grin spread wider than it should have, exposing sharp, uneven teeth, like something that had grown without guidance. On its cheek, tiny shells were embedded like growths. Jonah swore, scrambling back. Danny's phone slipped from her grip, splashing into the lake. The thing's eyes flicked to the ripples, then back to her. It hissed, a low, bubbling sound, like air escaping a submerged bottle. They bolted, the dock shuddering behind them as something heavy pulled itself onto it. The trail back felt different. The trees seemed closer, their branches reaching for them. Danny heard it behind them, a wet, dragging sound, like something crawling through the undergrowth, keeping pace. The marsh came into view. Jonah jumped the soggy patch. Danny was right behind when something clamped around her ankle. She screamed, yanking against the grip. Jonah spun, grabbed her arms, and pulled hard. The thing let go with a sound like suction breaking. As she stumbled free, socks shredded, skin beneath scored with deep, parallel grooves. Water streamed from the wounds, though she'd been running for minutes. They told the others she tripped. No one believed them. But the director didn't ask questions. He just muttered about keeping away from the lake and went back to stoking the fire. For a while, Danny stayed close to the crowd, but Jonah drifted away. When she went looking, she found him halfway down the Lover's Dock trail, standing very still in the dark. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "She's calling me," he said without turning. Her stomach clenched. "Jonah, don't." "She says she's cold. Says she misses me." "You don't know her." He turned then, and her breath caught. His eyes were pale and cloudy like milk. Water dripped from the corners of his mouth. "She says you'll do instead." Jonah lunged. Danny ran, heart slamming against her ribs. She didn't care where the trail went, only that it went away from him. But the trees thinned too soon. She burst out, not into the bonfire clearing, but onto the dock. The lake was no longer still. Its surface churned, dark shapes rising beneath it. For a heartbeat, she saw her own reflection on the churning water, only it wasn't moving with her, and its lips mouthed words she couldn't hear. She saw faces, some human, some not, just under the waterline, hair drifting like lakeweed, ghostly hands reaching out. Jonah was suddenly behind her, arms locking around her waist. "She's waiting," he breathed against her ear. From the water, the lakekeeper rose, taller than she'd imagined, skin sheened with slime, claws flexing. His gaze slid past Danny, fixing on Jonah with something like recognition. The keeper's eyes, sunken, haunted, held a flicker of pain beneath their monstrous gleam. The dock cracked under their weight. Freezing water closed over her head, and hands, too many hands, pulled her down. She felt the cold seep past her skin deeper, tugging at something weightless inside her, as if they weren't drowning her body, but pulling her very self into the dark. At sunrise, Jonah was found sitting on the dock, clothes bone dry, staring at the water. There was no sign of Danny, no body, no torn clothes in the reeds, only a faint ripple drifting toward the lake's center. When the camp director arrived, he glanced at Jonah with a strange mix of sorrow and warning. "You remind me of him," the director muttered, voice low. "Your father was the last to see the counselor before he disappeared and hit this lake. The man they say became the lake keeper. Some curses run deeper than we think." Jonah smiled faintly, his eyes still cloudy. "She's keeping the lake now," he said, as the ghostly image of her smiled up at him from underneath the water. Could grief and rage turn a person into a monster? How far would you go to escape a curse tied to your family? Some dates end with a kiss, others end with a body bag, like in this story inspired by Jenny Genius 97. I'd been jittery all day. Tonight was my second date with Carrie, and if it went well, maybe the start of something real. But Lamar was home. Labar being home was never a good sign. I'm not saying my roommate causes bad things to happen, just that every time he's around, something goes sideways. Plans fall apart, people get hurt, accidents happen. Like he's dragging a shadow in behind him every time he walks through the door. "What's the occasion, bud?" he asked, leaning on the doorframe. Meeting someone important?" I said, keeping it vague. Lamar had a way of prying until you regretted telling him everything. And if he knew about Carrie, he'd needle and poke until he ruined it without even meaning to. "Someone's being a naughty boy," he smirked. I tried to change the subject. "Any calls from the emergency ward?" "Not yet. But you better be ready if one comes in. You're the only paramedic they've got. All hail the overtime king." I gave a tight laugh. Lamar wasn't wrong. My job had a way of cutting through personal life like a scalpel, and somehow, it always seemed to happen when he was nearby. Lamar eyed me on his way out. "Go with white. Chicks dig the clean look." Not a chance. The last time I wore white on a date, sweat patches the size of continents had bloomed under my arms. I still remembered our first date in sharp detail. Carrie arriving with the black dress and pearl chain, curls spilling over her shoulders. I'd been so nervous I barely touched my drink. She'd been warm, bright, the kind of person you forget to be self-conscious around. But tonight, when I arrived at the seafood restaurant, her favorite, and saw her walking toward me, something felt wrong. The black dress and pearl chain were the same, but her skin looked pale, her eyes dull. No smile, no spark. "You look stunning," I said, pulling out her chair. She didn't react, just sat, staring out the window like she was watching something far away. The street outside was lit in streaks of yellow and white from passing cars, the sky swollen and dark clouds. Rain was coming. "Is something wrong?" I asked. No answer. She just kept her gaze fixed outside, as if waiting for something. I ordered for both of us, hoping the food would loosen her up. But the whole time, she sat in silence, the dim light making her skin look even paler. And when she finally looked back at me, her eyes didn't seem to focus right. She was looking just past my shoulder. I cleared my throat. "Carrie, I wanted to tell you something. I think there's something here, something real. I can see a future with you, us, laughing at our own inside jokes, maybe even a family someday. I'm ready for the next step." So, I reached for the box in my pocket. "Will you marry me?" That's when my phone buzzed. Sharon's name lit up the screen. She only called when someone's life was hanging by a thread. I answered. "Caden, we need you at Mansfield Park. Bad wreck. Driver's critical. If you're not here in 10 minutes, she won't make it." I looked at Carrie, still motionless. "I have to go," I told her. She didn't blink, didn't speak, just turned her head back to the window. The rain was coming down hard now, thin rivers sliding down the glass. I hit the gas, my wipers struggling against the downpour. The roads were slick and empty. In the silence, I noticed my phone had a new message from Carrie, time-stamped 7:03 p.m. "Not the right time," I muttered, keeping my eyes on the road. Mansfield Park appeared in the wash of my headlights. Sharon waved me over, rain plastering her hair to her head. "She's over here," she shouted. I crouched by the victim and froze. It was Carrie. Blood seeped into her black dress, running over the pearls at her throat. Her curls clung to her face, matted with rain and red. Her eyes were half open, glazed. Sharon's voice was muffled, far away. "Name's Carrie Spencer. We couldn't stop the bleeding. She's gone." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. I had just left her sitting at the restaurant. My hands moved automatically, checking for a pulse I already knew wasn't there. When I finally pulled my phone from my pocket, the message from her sat there like a flesh wound. "Hey Josh, Sorry, I won't be coming tonight. My grandma's sick and I have to meet her at Mansfield Park. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Love, Carrie. Timestamped the same moment I'd been sitting across from her. Back at my car, I stared at my reflection in the rain-smeared window, trying to make sense of it. Had I imagined her at the restaurant? Was my mind filling a seat that was empty? No. I remembered the sound of her chair slagging the tile, the faint perfume she wore, the way her fingers had brushed the water glass. Yet the waiter had never looked directly at her, and in my memory, her lips had never moved. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her across the table, skin pale, gaze fixed out the window. By dawn, I convinced myself grief was making me see patterns that weren't there. People die suddenly every day. Coincidences happen. I was halfway to believing it when my phone buzzed again. A photo message. No sender ID. It was the seafood restaurant, my table from last night. I was in the picture, sitting alone. The chair across from me was empty, except for a dark shadow, shaped like a woman leaning forward, her face turned toward the window. Do you believe spirits can show up in the moments before their death? If you saw someone you knew was already dead, would you stay or run? And now it's time for something from our listeners, and this week I wanted to share an email from Mai. Dear Something Scary, I have been a veteran listener and have been listening to 18 episodes per day. Wow, it had never occurred to me to send in a story until now. It happened during summer vacation. I was in Norway camping with my parents and younger siblings. We were sleeping in a big tent near a special kind of building with toilets inside smaller rooms. The toilet building had huge windows. There were 2 entrances, one at the back and the other at the front, which is where my family had our tent. I remember we had to cross a playground to get to the toilet building. Now onto what happened. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to pee really bad, so I grabbed the key card for the toilet building, put on my shoes, and got out of the tent. I was a bit scared because I was the only one outside, but I hurried to the toilets. I got inside one of the smaller rooms that had a shower, a sink, and a mirror, and of course a toilet. Just as I was about to sit down, I heard a knock, knock, knock on one of the huge windows. Mind you, there were no bushes or trees near enough to hit the window. I hurried to finish. When I was done, I ran over to the window, and nothing was there. Though I was still a bit shaken, I ran back to the tent. But when I passed the playground, I saw something in the bushes. It looked like a werewolf, but not completely transformed yet. It had glowing red eyes that seemed to stare right into my soul. I didn't think, I just ran right back to the tent. I hid inside the sleeping bag. That's when I realized the bushes where I saw the thing led right to the tent I was in. It was blowing so hard outside, and I didn't hear anything else. That's when I started praying. I prayed for my family and my friends, but also that the thing wouldn't unzip the tent. Then, what I feared most happened. I heard movement in the bushes and a branch break. I thought it was just a person outside until the zipper opened. Now you might think I was stupid for what I'm about to say, but when you're in a situation fearing for your life, you do stupid things. So I decided that if I was going to die, I wanted to see my killer. I peeked out of the sleeping bag, and it was my dad. What was he doing there? I asked him what he was doing. He said he was just going out to fasten the tent more. I was so shocked and so happy that it was my dad, but every now and then, I still see the thing. My dad doesn't believe me when I tell him about it, though. He does remember that night. All I want now is help because I don't know what I saw or what to do. My biggest concern is that it will come back. And next time, what if it gets me? Thanks for taking the time to read this, and keep doing what you do. Give us something to be scared of. That was a really creepy story, and I hope you figure out what it was. If anybody in the comments thinks they know, let us know and let Mai know. All right, keep sending in these stories, y'all. I love reading them. Sometimes the waves whisper secrets that are better off left unheard. Like in this story written by Sarah Lukasiewicz. They warned visitors about the sea before they even stepped off the train. And Shira Hama. Not about sharks or storms, or even riptides, but about the sea itself. The locals said she was a living thing, that she could be kind if she liked you, or cruel if she didn't. And if she wanted you, there was nothing anyone could do to keep you from her. Kenji should have listened. It was August, the height of tourist season, and he and his friends had rented a guest house near the coast. They were supposed to spend the week surfing, sunbathing, and forgetting about the looming uncertainty of life after graduation. His friends preferred the crowded beach on the North Shore. Kenji preferred the quieter South Cove, the one the locals avoided. That was where he met her. She was sitting alone at the edge of the rocks, the tide foaming around her bare feet. Her black hair hung heavy with salt water, and her skin seemed almost luminous against the fading sky. She didn't smile, but when Kenji waved, she tilted her head slightly as though weighing a decision. Then she said, "The waves are good here at night." Her name was Sayori. Or so she told him. And she didn't live in town. She lived by the town, as she put it. She never spoke much about herself, but she was there every evening after sunset, barefoot on the rocks, waiting for him. They began swimming together, slipping into the sea after dark when no one else was around. The water felt warmer at night, the waves softer, as though holding him instead of tossing him. Sayori never grew cold, never seemed tired, and could dive under for so long he would grow anxious, certain she'd drowned, only to see her rise, smiling faintly, a dozen meters away. On the third night, she asked, "Do you love the ocean?" He hesitated. "I think so." "You have to love her completely," she said, "or she won't keep you." By the fifth night, the tide was behaving strangely. The water would rush in too quickly when the moon was still low, then retreat, leaving fish gasping on the sand. His friends noticed, but Kenji said nothing about Sayori. She felt like a secret the sea had given him, and he feared that speaking about her might make her vanish. One evening, she asked him to swim farther out than ever before. The horizon was a thin silver line, the water so calm it was like gliding through glass. He felt weightless, untethered, until he realized he could no longer see the shore. "Where's the land?" he asked, trying to laugh. She turned to him, water streaming from her hair. "You don't need it. You have me." Something in her tone made his stomach lurch. He kicked back toward the shore, but the current shifted, sudden, brutal. The water clenched around his legs, dragging him backward. His heart thundered. His lungs began to sting with every gasp, no matter how hard he panicked. His body barely moved. "Sayori, help!" She didn't come right away. She only floated, watching him flail, until his muscles screamed and a black fog crept in at the edge of his vision. Then, in one smooth motion, she was beside him, her fingers gripping his jaw, forcing his gaze to hers. Her lips brushed his, cold, almost metallic, and she blew a rush of air into his mouth. His chest jolted, fire spreading through his veins. The current released him as suddenly as it had taken him, and he swam until his arms ached and his throat tasted of copper. He collapsed onto the sand, coughing until spots burst behind his eyes. Hours later, his friends found him wandering along the cove, dizzy and trembling, unable to remember how he'd made it back. He told himself she had saved him. That kiss had been breath, life. But that night, he dreamed he was sinking. The darkness below was full of pale shapes, all reaching for him. And in the distance, Sayori's voice whispered, "Mine." By the seventh night, his body was walking to the cove without his mind's consent. Sayori was waiting on the rocks, just as before. "I thought you left me," he said. "I wouldn't," she murmured, and took his hand. Her skin was colder than the water, her grip unyielding. "Stay with me," she whispered, "just until sunrise." The moon was high when they slipped into the water again. Sayuri swam ahead, glancing back to make sure he followed. Time felt strange, night endless. The sea lay too calm, too deep. Then he saw them, pale figures below, drifting slowly in the dark. Dozens of them. Their hair floated like weeds. Their eyes were pale and open, their mouths slack. "Who?" he began, but salt water flooded his mouth. Sayuri turned, her hair twirling around her face. "They love the ocean completely," she said, "and she kept them." She dove, beckoning him to follow. His lungs began to scream, raw fire tearing through his ribs. Pressure crushed his ears. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum in his skull. He kicked upward, but the water pressed down like a living hand. Something cold and slick wrapped around his ankle, yanking him down. Sayuri was there instantly, her hands on his face, her lips brushing his again. But this time, there was no breath, only the taste of salt and iron. The truth hit him too late. She hadn't saved him before. She had claimed him, marked him. That first kiss had been a tether, tying him to her, to the sea. At dawn, Kenji woke on the shore, alone. His chest ached, every breath shallow and strange, like the ocean still lived inside his lungs. That night, he locked his door, but at 3 a.m., a soft tapping came at the glass. Sayuri stood barefoot on the balcony, her hair dripping, her smile faint. "I saved you once," she said. "I won't have to save you again." The next morning, the bed was empty. The balcony door stood wide open. Wet footprints trailed to the shore. Some nights, the tide rises faster than it should. Locals say they see a young man swimming past the horizon. Sometimes he is alone. Sometimes a pale woman swims beside him, her hair black as the deep. And if you listen closely, over the hiss of the waves, you might hear her whisper, "Do you love the ocean?" Would you dare to swim in waters locals warned you about? Do you believe the sea can choose who it keeps? Or it's random who perishes in the ocean? Do you have a story of almost being taken? If so, send me an email and tell me your story at SomethingScary@Snarled.com. This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, audio edited and mixed by Fitz Harris, additional audio editing by Calvin Linderman, produced by Anna Villalobos, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman. If you have a story you'd like to submit, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Don't forget to watch the video version of Something Scary over at youtube.com/snarled. And if you'd like to support the show and everything we do at Snarled, join our Patreon at patreon.com/snarled. Thanks for joining me once again for Something Scary, and I hope you enjoyed our 3 new terrifying tales. I hope your new school year is starting off with a bang, and tell one of your favorite classmates about our podcast if you listen to us weekly. Also, don't forget to check out our new merch and like and subscribe both here on Spotify and YouTube. All right, I'll see you next time. Sweet screams.